Well, my name's Andy Nation, and I profess to be a long-distance swimmer.
I think he gets an idea in his head and realises it's going to be a lot of work, but the trouble is he puts everything, all his effort into doing something. If he's going to do something, it's got to be the best.
My target is to swim from Teddington, West London, through to Dover and then across to Calais, 147 miles.
My name's Barry Norman and I'm going to be talking to Andy Nation, who is about to embark on a huge charity swim next year. And I may tell you, when you've heard this, I hope that you will contribute to this fund that he's raising for charities. And any celebrities out there, for heaven's sake, send him an autograph, because as you'll discover, he's going to raise money for the charities with those as well.
In at the deep end, a feat never attempted before, Andy Nation is in practice to swim the length of the Thames in August.
It's unusual, but life's for living, isn't it? You can sit in front of a television and live other people's lives, or you can go out and do things yourself. And you've got to do it. You've got to get on with your life. Otherwise, it just passes you by.
I swam in 2005 from the source of the Thames down to Teddington. I did 12 days of swimming over 14 days. And that's about the same distance. So although it was an easier swim, it was still a very cold swim, and I think it was a good measure to see whether I can do this. Of course, I'm 7 years older now, so
more experienced.
More experienced, yes. First of all, when I did my Thames swim in 2005, I was asked afterwards by a very good friend of mine from Welling 41 Club, a guy called Trevor Cook. He was chairman of the Herts MS Therapy Centre at the time because his wife had MS. And he asked me if I would ever do another swim, if I would do it for his charity. And I said yes, I would. But I also wanted to give to another charity that would be available for everyone else. Anyone can make use of the Herts Air Ambulance. I wanted a charity that had low overheads, Herts Air Ambulance. I wanted a charity that had no government funding, Herts Air Ambulance. And I wanted a charity that would be available to everyone, Herts Air Ambulance. So that was my choice, and I've stuck with it, and they've been very supportive. Both these charities have been very supportive in helping me to help them. And indeed, the Herts MS Therapy Centre, that doesn't only treat MS sufferers, where after my accident they gave me treatment in their hyperbaric chamber, which is oxygen treatment under high pressure. I don't know whether it helped me, but I know it certainly didn't do me any harm, and I like to think that it's helped me in my recovery. Of course, the sad thing is that Trevor Cook's wife, Marilyn, died last year. So this swim is also partly as a memorial to Marilyn, who was a lovely lady. I knew her from when she used to run around and she was fully mobile, and then she gradually was restricted to a wheelchair, and finally last year she died. But she was lovely, and this is partially in memory of her. I have many names in here, many of whom you would recognise.
You've done very well. You got Tony Blair.
Tony Blair, yes.
Good heavens. Gordon Brown. Blind word, you've done well.
The autograph book is in two sections. Section 2 is for anyone whose name alone would enhance the value of the book.
You mean movie stars and the like?
Movie stars. I've got people like David Cameron, John Major, Tony Blair, Gordon Brown. I've got the Archbishop of Canterbury and his predecessor, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Lech Walesa, Elizabeth Taylor, Dennis Waterman, a whole load of people from Queen Elizabeth. So here we are, £35,000 raised and still trying to get more autographs. I've been in touch with the Team GB and they've said they'll forward autograph requests to all of their medal winners. So I've prepared a lot of these autograph forms. They come in pairs. They go together with an article in the Odyssey Mail and one of my leaflets telling them all about the swim with a map on the back. And when I sign this last letter that's just come out of the printer now, that will be all of them done.
A man from Nebworth is about to complete a 147-mile swimming challenge across the Channel, only a year after breaking his neck. Andy Nation has already...
I run about 5 yards. I tripped. My hands didn't get out quick enough. I fell on my head. I felt the crunch. I rolled over onto my back. And the next thing I knew, I couldn't feel anything below my neck. It was just an impossible thought that I should ever be like that for the rest of my life.
When I first saw him lying there, I thought he was larking around, and he has, over many times in the years, he's fallen from the tree house, he's done things, and he lies there and pretends he's dead. And so my first reaction was, are you being stupid or is this real? And he said, no, it's real. I then thought he had anaphylactic shock from the bee sting, and then he managed to say, it's my neck, and I can't feel anything.
I got to Addenbrooke's and they did an MRI scan. The following morning they decided to operate. It was a 6-hour operation where they cut through my neck just there and went around my trachea and esophagus onto the front of my spine. They straightened it. They took some bone from my hip, put in there, and also titanium plate and screws. And when I came round, I was very pleased that I could actually feel my limbs again. The road to recovery, well, that's a fairly short story actually, because once I got the use of my limbs back and the feeling, I did the physiotherapy, I worked hard at it. It was extremely hard and extremely painful. I was on a lot of drugs at the time. I'm still on a whole load of drugs, and here you can see, apart from my breakfast, I have to take these now, I have to take these later on, and I have to take these this evening. If I'm fit enough to do the swim and I finish, I should be really glad. A couple of days later, I think it was, my family and my wife were all out. And I was at home by myself for a short period. And the emotions got to me, and I just cried like a baby. I cried and cried and cried for about 5 minutes. Eventually I stopped and I felt better. I'd actually got the emotional trauma out of me.
Andy is so determined to do things, and I felt that perhaps by letting him carry on, it gave him a focus, it gave him a point to improve on his health again, gave him an aim. Whereas if he hadn't, I think he would have gone into just severe depression. But inwardly, perhaps I was hoping that he'd realise himself that he couldn't do this. But of course, it doesn't happen like that, and it just made him more determined to do it. And I must admit, I greatly admire how he overcame all his obstacles, and the amount of exercise and physiotherapy and training he did to get to this stage was incredible. But hopefully it's done his health a world of good.
It was very emotional. It's still now emotional to talk about it, but there we are. We got through it.
While the rest of us worry about the heat, one man is worried about the cold. Hip, hip! Hey! That's because he's spending the next few weeks in the River Thames, then the North Sea and the English Channel as he swims to Calais in France. Andy Nation started his mammoth swim earlier today at Teddington Lock in West London.
4 years in the preparation for this swim. The day I actually set off, well, it all seems to happen. There's a bit of a rush in the end.
I was transport, so driving what we called the Beast.
Ho-yay, ho-yay, ho-yay! Andy's on his way to CALAIS! God save the Queen!
Today I'm going to be on the second safety rib, helping out, and we're going to be checking the water ahead of the main boat that's going along with Andy as a swim boat.
So we are the Herts Air Ambulance, and we're part of the Essex and Herts Air Ambulance Trust. And we are so grateful because Andy has chosen to support us as one of his charities. And it's really nice that he's picked a local charity like the Herts Air Ambulance.
When I started swimming, there were many things going through my mind. One of which was, what had we forgotten?
They forgot about me because I was dealing with the trailer, hooking it against the vehicle, the Beast, so Lever could take it down to parking space for it. And then I came back, and then suddenly, there were the boats, and everybody had gone.
From always saying I would never drive through the centre of London to now in this Beast, driving through Chelsea, Trafalgar Square, Knightsbridge. I just commandeered this man and said, "Excuse me, could you tell me how do I get to St Catherine's Dock?" I gave him a lift and then found that he didn't drive and he was trying to take me through public footpaths. So that was a bit of a nightmare.
Once you get going, there's time to think about absolutely everything and nothing. You're swimming mile after mile after mile. You get to do a lot of thinking, not just about the swim, but about all sorts of other things that perhaps you'd be doing otherwise. The only scenery I saw was a quick blink to the south bank every time I took a stroke. And if you imagine just closing your eyes and opening them like that, that is my view of the south bank. Certain buildings stood out. There's one particular building that I remember, a very tall, slim building, and it was on a peninsula. So as we swam round the peninsula, it seemed like I was never getting past this damned building. But some of the other buildings we went past went by very quickly. So it was good. I really enjoyed having the landmarks there because on other swims where you haven't got the landmark, you can't really evaluate how fast you're going. Well, the charity supporters followed us along part of the river, and they had buckets to collect. They were wearing the team t-shirts, and I never actually caught a glimpse of them. So they were doing their thing and I was doing mine, but I did know that they were there. When I got to Vauxhall Bridge, it seemed to have taken forever, but as always, all of a sudden I was there, and that was really good. To have completed the first day was very encouraging. And of course, when we stopped there at Laxdock were all the yellow t-shirts along in front of the MI5 building, and a few other supporters as well. So I got out onto the shore, and they gave me a wave. That was very good to have the first day completed.
I must admit, from not being the sort of person that likes camping to finding we were going to be sleeping on a boat most of the nights in a very intimate conditions, I was actually quite relieved to get there and sleep on the boat.
Each day when I started the swim for that day, I related back to the first day and thinking, oh well, here we go, only 6 hours to go and then I'll be getting out again. It wasn't really that much of a problem. It was quite enjoyable to get in the water. The weather was fairly warm and the water was nice and cool. The wetsuit kept me warm enough, which was good for my spine. I was very pleased to be back in the water and doing another day.
The biggest thing was the sun and the heat, and was how to actually stop yourself from being sunburnt. So loads and loads of sun cream, wearing long, much as we had short sleeve shirts, but wearing long sleeves underneath, so that and wearing hats as well, so that we didn't get burnt up.
Andy is a night person and will quite happily stay up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, but he's useless in the morning. Luckily, the swim because of the tides, it didn't really kick off most days. He didn't have to leave until perhaps 11 o'clock in the morning. So it gave him time in the morning to unwind and come to. But it was mainly getting him to go to bed at night and just say, enough's enough. Everybody else is tired. You've got to go to sleep.
Every few hours, we would stop him. He would have his medication. He would have something to eat, something to drink. And then back into the water again, and off we'd go again. On average, Andy swam between 5 and 6 hours each day. We would obviously look at his route. We have a navigation system on the boat that we could make sure that he was taking the most effective route, using the tides to the best of their advantage. And all the time we were looking at our speed over the ground and speed through the water in relationship to Andy. And at times we were not getting anywhere. That's usually at the end of the day in slack water, and we would then pull Andy out and then mark that spot and then come back to that spot.
I had a rough idea of when I'd get the call, and I'd had a word with Neil Streeter, the pilot, a couple of days before, and he told me about the weather forecast, and we knew that the Thursday was looking good, but it could be later. On the Thursday morning I checked with Neil, and he said the weather seems to be closing in for the weekend. It looks like it could be today. And it wasn't until I guess it was about 5:30 that evening that I got the call to say, fine, we're off, you need to be here by midnight so that we can prepare to get the swim underway. And it was that time that I felt, gosh, this is really it, the channel, the big one. So it was a little bit concerning, but I was ready for it.
The worst part was just actually not being able to go with him, standing at the marina in the pitch dark and just watching this boat go away. And whereas normally you could stand and watch him start off the swim, which is what I did most days, he just went off into the dark. And Tanya and I were in the car, and all we could do was stand in a lay-by and watch a light going down this dark sea. And that was the only contact I really had.
I knew that with a wetsuit I could do the full 21 miles. I was a bit concerned that if I didn't wear the wetsuit, I might have trouble with my spine, and I had to make a call. In the event, I decided to ditch the wetsuit and swim under the Channel Swimming and Piloting Federation rules, which means you can only wear trunks, cap and goggles. In hindsight, that was a mistake, because whereas the first 4 or 5 hours my swim rate was good, my stroke rate was good, and I was looking at a 12-hour crossing. By 7 hours the cold had got to my spine, and although I hadn't realised it, I'd slowed down dramatically, and my angle in the water had changed from like that to like that, and the colder I got, the lower I got, and the slower my stroke pace got. So it was, Stuart then told me at 7 hours I was looking at a 24-hour swim. So I said, well, I'll carry on and see how it goes. And I tried to push harder, but the harder I pushed, the more my spine hurt. At 7.5 hours, I decided, when Stuart told me I still wasn't making any better progress, that discretion was the better part of valour, and decided to pull out. I'm glad it was my decision rather than being told to pull out, because perhaps I would have felt robbed if it had been someone else's decision, but I made the decision on the basis that my health was worth more than raising a few extra pounds for charity.
I knew what he would be feeling, and I must admit part of me didn't actually want to meet him, because I just thought he's going to be so upset that he hasn't made it. I think Andy's never really failed anything. Every time he's attempted anything, he's always managed to complete it. And suddenly this is the first time that he hasn't. But again, it was his decision, and I'm grateful that it was his decision. And I'm grateful that he used common sense and realised that his health was far more important than any swim, any charity. I think if it had been a year ago prior to his accident, however long it would have taken, he would have got there, he would have done it. But I'm just really, really pleased that he realised that his health was more important.
And he needs to be really, really proud of what he has achieved. And I think everybody needs to really follow in everybody else's example. If we're up to £47,000, that if we can hit 50,000, by all means, please donate, get as much money as we can to support two really worthwhile organisations.
Do I have any regrets? I regret it's taken up so much of my family time, but I've tried to make up for that in other ways, and I regret that I didn't actually finish, but from every other aspect I'm very pleased with the event, the way it was organised, the way the team worked together, and I think it's all been a very positive experience.